Picture a city that built itself on the cargo of the entire world and forgot to share any of it with the people who carried the cargo. Fill it with 500,000 souls packed into streets designed for a third that number. Add fog that rolls in off a river so crowded with ships you can barely see the water. Add coal smoke that settles into your hair, your wool, your lungs, until you stop noticing because your lungs have simply accepted it as the new normal. Add the smell of 16 tanneries and a dozen soap works and the largest cattle market in England all operating simultaneously within 3 miles of each other. That's Liverpool in 1885, wealthiest port in the empire, second city of the most powerful nation on earth, a place where cotton from Alabama and tobacco from Virginia and sugar from Barbados all flow through the docks and transform into money so vast it builds marble banking halls and Italianate mansions on the good streets, while the people who load and unload that cargo live 12 to a room in houses with 1 standpipe and no drains and a privy shared between 6 families. A place where you can watch a millionaire's carriage roll past a woman dying in the gutter and the carriage will not slow down. A place where a girl can work 50 hours a week for 8 shillings and still understand in her bones that those 8 shillings are the least of her problems. We're going there tonight. Not as visitors standing on the pierhead admiring the steamers, not as one of those ladies on Bold Street with a hat that costs more than a docker's monthly wage. We're living it, 1 week, 1 girl. Everything she sees, smells, fears, and survives. And the central question, the one that shapes every morning and every Sunday and every decision she makes, isn't anything so simple as, will she find love? The question is, will she find a husband before something goes wrong that cannot be fixed? Those are not the same question. Not here. Not in 1885. I make these history stories for people who want to understand what life actually was, not the cleaned-up version from the textbooks. The version with cold floors and chapped hands, and the particular terror of being 17 in a Victorian city, where the most important decision of your life has to be made from a position of almost no power, almost no information, and almost no time. Get comfortable. Here we go. Here is what nobody tells you about being a poor girl in 1880s Liverpool. The most important decision of your life. The one that will determine whether you eat properly, whether you live in 1 room or 2, whether your children survive past infancy, whether you end your days in a workhouse cot or in some kind of dignity. That decision isn't made by you. Not really. It happens on Sunday afternoons, in the 3 minutes you're allowed to stand outside the factory gate before your forewoman tells you to move along. In the thin window between the end of your working day and the beginning of your employer's suspicion, in the cold gap between what you want and what you're permitted. It's called courtship. And for poor girls in 1880s Liverpool, it is a high-stakes game played with almost no cards in your hand. Your eyes open to darkness and cold. Not gentle, pleasant cold. The kind that has spent all night getting in through the gap in the window where the putty cracked away last February, and has been working on you steadily, methodically, soaking through the blanket and into the wool of your petticoat, and finally reaching your skin in the last hour before dawn. The kind of cold that doesn't announce itself. It just exists and you're in it, and becoming aware of it is the exact moment you become fully awake. You lie still for 1/2 second, doing what you do every morning, remembering where you are. The smell reminds you. Always the smell. It comes in layers, the way everything in this city comes in layers. The first is coal smoke, the fireplace in the Room below was lit sometime in the night, and the chimney in this terrace has been drawing badly since October, when a brick shifted somewhere in the stack. It doesn't draw badly enough for anyone to pay to fix it, just badly enough that a thin haze of smoke ghosts its way up through the floorboards and lingers, and this house has been absorbing coal smoke since 1851, and is now so thoroughly impregnated that you could strip the wallpaper, burn it, and heat a kettle. The second is wet wool. Your grey coat hangs on the hook by the door. You wore it in the rain on Wednesday, 3 days ago, and it is still not fully dry. Wet wool has a particular smell, dense and animal, and faintly like something that has given up. It is not a bad smell exactly. It is just the smell of working clothes working in working weather. The third is the woman in the other bed. Mrs. Callahan, 53, widowed, works at the salt warehouse on the waterfront, snores with the commitment you have come to, respect as a kind of professionalism. She washed on Sunday last. It is Thursday now. The fourth, and here there is no delicate way to put this, is the privy. The privy is at the end of the yard, shared between 6 households, perhaps 20 people, and the smell from it travels on cold air with perfect indifference to privacy or anyone's feelings about it. And underneath everything, the river. Even here, 4 streets from the water, the Mersey announces itself every morning. Low tide from the smell of it, mud and salt and dead fish, and the particular ancient rot of a waterway that has been receiving the waste of a major city for centuries without complaint. It smells like home now. That thought, home, is something you turn over briefly, the way you'd test a floorboard before trusting your weight to it. 2 years ago, the smell of Liverpool was something that hit you like a door in the face. Now your nose does nothing. Your body has simply reclassified it as baseline. Your mother would be horrified. Your mother's kitchen smelled of turf smoke and bread, and the cold, clean smell of County Mayo hillside coming through an open door. But your mother is in County Mayo, and you are in Liverpool, and the Mersey smells the way it smells. Welcome to December 1885. You pull yourself upright. The mattress, stuffed with flock, which is the shredded floor waste of cotton mills, which is everything that falls below the looms and gets swept up and sold on for a halfpenny a pound to people who make mattresses for people who cannot afford better, makes a sound like a small argument settling and then goes still. You bought it from a woman on Scotland Road who called it nearly new. You believe this in the same way you believe in promises made on street corners. Your feet find the floor. Bare boards, no paint left on them, cold in a way that is physical information rather than sensation. You know what this cold will do to your feet if you stand in it too long. First, the numbness, then the pins and needles when blood comes back. Better to move fast. Your stockings are where you left them, rolled into each other the way your mother taught you, the outer one kept in by the inner, keeping the heat trapped. You dress in the half dark. Not because there's anything to hide. Mrs. Callahan is still turned to the wall with the determined inertia of a woman who has worked every day since she was 13, and recognises Saturday as a slight improvement on the alternatives. You dress in the dark because your hands know where the buttons are. The morning routine is fastest when you don't think about it. The work dress first. Blue cotton, Monday through Saturday, darkish enough to hide splashes, sturdy enough to survive the wrangle room, plain enough that the forewoman, Mrs. Doyle, cannot find anything to say about vanity. It goes on over the petticoat, white, nominally, though white is now a complicated idea, and then the bodice laced at the back, which requires 30 seconds of blind fumbling between your shoulder blades every single morning of your life. Nobody who has ever had to dress themselves without assistance has ever designed women's clothing. This is a fact you've arrived at independently and confirmed over 2 years of daily evidence. The apron will go on at the laundry. You carry it folded in your bag. Boots last. Black leather. 4 buttons on each side. Purchased from a stall on St. John's Market for 9p. Fitting almost perfectly except for the left boot, which is slightly too short and has given you a corn on your little toe that has been a loyal companion since October. You button them with the hook, 10 seconds per boot, and the small pressure of the leather enclosing your foot is, in its way, reassuring. The world is cold and uncertain, but your feet are in boots, and the boots are done up, and that is a thing accomplished. You tie your hair back. Brown, thick, manageable if you keep it braided. At night, in the small mirror, 6 inches by 4, propped against the window frame, giving you approximately a quarter of your face at one time. Your reflection assembles itself in sections. You look older than 17. This is Liverpool. Everyone here looks older than they are. Mrs. Callahan does not stir as you go downstairs. Eldon Street is a terrace of 8 houses, built sometime in the 1840s for working people, which is to say, built small, built cheap, and built with a comfortable assumption that the people who lived in them didn't really need light or space, or the luxury of a room to themselves. The ceilings are low enough that Daniel Carey from the attic, who is 6 feet tall and drives a night tram, moves through the house like a man constantly expecting a beam that hasn't come yet. Your house is occupied by 5 households. Ground floor front, Mrs. Higgins, who holds the lease and sublets the rooms and is a widow of 60 with a jaw like the prow of a merchant vessel and opinions about everything. She occupies the front room and the kitchen and has made absolutely clear in the particular way that small women make things clear, not loudly, just repeatedly, until it becomes part of the atmosphere, that the kitchen is hers. Hot water in the mornings costs 3p a week and requires a knock and the correct expression. Ground floor back, the Flanagan family. Mr. and Mrs. Flanagan and 3 children under 10 in a room 14 feet square. Mr. Flanagan works the docks on casual, which means every morning he walks down to the gate in the dark and waits to be picked. Most days he is picked. Some days he is not. The mathematics of the Flanagan household are conducted in the narrow gap between those 2 outcomes. First floor front, you and Mrs. Callahan. First floor back, Agnes from Birkenhead, who works the tobacco factory and never speaks to anyone and keeps her door locked and is a mystery you've decided is not yours to solve. Attic. Daniel Carey, who drives trams all night and sleeps all day with the total conviction of a man who has made peace with his hours. 20 people, 1 privy, 1 standpipe in the yard that delivers cold water from the mains between 7 and 9 in the morning. 1 range in Mrs. Higgins' kitchen, operated by Mrs. Higgins according to Mrs. Higgins's schedule. The smell of this house, accumulated over 30 years, absorbed into the plaster and the floorboards and the strip of wallpaper still clinging to the landing wall, is people. People living close and continuously, eating and sleeping and being ill and being born and sometimes dying for generation after generation. It is the smell of the city concentrated into 1,400 square feet. You don't notice it anymore. That is, if you're honest, one of the more unsettling things about how you've changed. The arrangement with Mrs. Higgins is 3p a week, for which she will boil water at 6:30 and let you use the range to make toast. You knock at 20 to 7. She's up, Mrs. Higgins says before you can speak. She refers to herself in the third person always. in the manner of a person who made a decision about this at some point and has seen no reason to revisit it. The kitchen is warm, its sole virtue, but it is real. 8 feet by 7, and containing the range, the table, 2 chairs, the meat safe, and Mrs. Higgins' cat, Sergeant, a grey animal of immense age and profound displeasure, occupying the chair nearest the heat and examining you with the expression of a magistrate who hasn't decided whether to proceed. "She's not impressed with your boots," Mrs. Higgins says, setting the kettle. "You look at your boots. They are the same boots as yesterday." "What's wrong with my boots?" "Needs polishing." The beginning of a conversation you will lose. You want to get a husband? You start with the boots. Men look at boots. Men look at boots, you repeat. She had a husband. She settles into the remaining chair. Sergeant does not move, has never moved for anyone, and arranges herself comfortably in the knowledge that this is her kitchen and her conversation, and she will conduct it at her pace. 31 years. He was a haberdasher on Dale Street. He always looked at boots first, said you could tell everything about a person from their boots. The tea is strong and dark, poured from a pot that has been brewing since 5:30 and has achieved a density that approaches architecture. You drink it standing up because Sergeant is in your chair, and neither you nor Mrs. Higgins will make him move. The bread from yesterday, cut thick, held in front of the range on the long fork until one side goes properly brown. Not pale, not scorched, the exact brown that means the sugars are doing their work, then turned. Then buttered with the end of the block of dripping that Mrs. Higgins keeps in the meat safe and deploys with the careful precision of someone managing a strategic resource. You eat quickly. The laundry starts at 7:30. It is a 15-minute walk, and Mrs. Doyle docks a halfpenny for every minute past the half hour, which is 1 penny in 2 minutes, which is 1/10 of your daily earnings for being slightly late, which is a calculation you made once and have never needed to make again. "She'll find you a husband yet," Mrs. Higgins says as you pull on your coat. You say goodbye to Sergeant, who looks past you at something more interesting on the wall. December in Liverpool means fog. Not a gentle, picturesque fog. The fog that comes off the Mersey in winter is a thick yellow-grey substance that smells of coal and river mud and carries the chill of the water directly into your chest. It softens the gas lamps into orange blurs and turns the end of every street into a question mark. It makes the already grey city grey in a different, denser way. Eldon Street to Tithebarn Street in good weather, 15 minutes. In December, fog, 20, because you cannot see the puddles until you're in them. You know the route by feel now. Left out the front door, down to the corner, right onto Scotland Road. Scotland Road is already moving. Carts coming south from the farms to the north. Wheels grinding on wet cobblestones. The horse's breath making small fog banks of their own. Women with shawls pulled over their heads moving fast and purposefully, all of them going somewhere they need to be before the day properly starts. A man on the corner selling hot chestnuts from a brazier, his face simultaneously red from the heat and reddened by the cold, which gives him a particular roasted quality, and the smell of the chestnuts hits you for 1 full second, sweet and smoky, before the fog takes it back. Scotland Road. If you wanted to find Irish Liverpool, this is where you'd start. More Irish than anywhere outside Dublin, people say, and they're not wrong. Every other sign has Gaelic letters, alongside the English, though fewer people read the Gaelic now. The churches are packed on Sunday. The pubs are Irish run, and the grocers are Irish run, and the accents you pass on this street are from every county in Ireland, mixed together until you can't always tell Cork from Donegal anymore, which is one of the things the city does. It homogenises. After 5 years here, you stop being a Mayo girl and become a Liverpool Irish girl, which is something different. You're still, at 2 years, somewhere between those two things. Off Scotland Road, right onto Tithebarn Street, and then you smell it before you see it. You always smell it before you see it. Mercer's Steam Laundry occupies a building that was once a cooperage. You can still smell it faintly underneath everything else. A ghost of wood shavings and barrel tar that 60 years of commercial laundry work has not fully exorcised. The conversion happened a decade ago. The interior walls knocked through 4 copper, boilers installed, a bank of 12 mangles, a drying room with ceiling racks that run on pulleys, a pressing room with 6 ironing stations. The smell reaches you half a street away. Soda ash first. That's the baseline. Sharp, chemical, alkaline, unmistakable. It's what they dissolve into the wash water, great quantities of it, to break down grease and starch and all the accumulated human residue that builds up in collars and sheets and the tablecloths of Liverpool's hotels and restaurants and clubs. Soda ash is cheap and it works and it is relentless, and after 2 years you have absorbed it into your hands in the form of a permanent slight dryness that no amount of glycerin will fully undo. Over that, soap. Brown soap, hard soap, soft soap in varying proportions depending on what's being washed. On Mondays, when the hotel wash comes in, you can smell Mercer's from Scotland Road. Over that, steam. Theoretically clean, just water, heated, but carrying everything that has been dissolved in it. The smell of wet linen heated to near boiling, the smell of starch being cooked. Faintly, underneath that, the smell of whatever the linen has spent its time absorbing. Dining rooms, sick beds, hotel corridors, the bodies of strangers, and underneath it all the smell that will not leave no matter how much chemistry you apply to it. Human. The sweat of the women who work here, absorbed into the walls and the floor and the very grain of the wooden mangle frames, over years and years and years of 8-hour shifts. The laundry workers are gathering at the gate when you arrive. 6 minutes to the half hour. On time. 14 of you on the day shift. Mostly women your age or slightly older. 2 girls who are supposed to be 15 and aren't, and Mrs. Doyle knows and doesn't say anything because their families need the money, and there is a particular silence around that knowledge that everyone maintains. One woman of 40, Mrs. Lennon, who has been here 9 years, and knows everything, and volunteers nothing. She moves through the laundry with the efficiency of someone who has optimized every motion, not a movement wasted. Her body long since adapted to the rhythms of this specific work, in the way that bodies adapt to anything they're asked to do repeatedly for long enough. Morning Nelly. Bridget Moran, 18, from Mayo, arrived a year before you, has a bed in a house on Dale Street, and an ambition to save £30 and open a millinery shop, which is the ambition that circulates through the laundry like a mild fever. Everyone has it. Nobody achieves it, but it persists because it is better to have an ambition that doesn't come true than to have no ambition at all. Morning. Fog something terrible today. It is. My cousin says it'll clear by noon. You think about your cousin, the one on Vauxhall Road, married now, 4 children and another coming, who has the look of someone who has decided that expectations were always the problem, and say nothing about your cousin. Mrs. Doyle opens the gate. You file in. This is what your hands will do for the next 8.5 hours. Thursday is institutional wash. The hospital on Pembroke Place, Brownlow Hill, the workhouse infirmary attached to it, sends 3 cartloads, church linens from St. Ignatius, the table linen from the magistrate's court on Dale Street, which is always, inexplicably, very clean, as if the administration of justice requires spotless napery. The copper boilers are already fired when you arrive. The women who run the boilers, the heaviest physical work at Mercer's, feeding coal into the furnaces beneath and stirring the great vats of bubbling wash water with wooden paddles the length of punt poles. Those women are already sweating through their aprons. The steam from the vats fills the upper air of the washroom in a permanent low cloud. In January this is actually pleasant. In July it is something else entirely. Your station is the mangle room. The mangle, 2 heavy wooden rollers, approximately 4 feet wide, turned by a wrought iron handle. You feed wet linen through the gap between the rollers, which squeeze out the water with a mechanical thoroughness that no amount of hand-wringing can match. The mangle replaced 4 women. It earns more in a day than those 4 women earned in a week. This is progress of a sort. It is also why your wage is 8 shillings and 6pence rather than what it might have been. The sheets come to you sopping. A hospital sheet fresh from the copper vat weighs perhaps 8 pounds before the mangle. After 5. That 3-pound difference is water, running down through the drainage channel in the floor, which carries it out into the yard drain. Over the course of a day, through 250 sheets, you will have moved approximately 750 pounds of water from one side of the wooden rollers to the other. You feed one end. Between the rollers, you turn the handle, the rollers bite, the sheet pulls through, you guide it with your left hand, keeping it flat, preventing the edges from folding inward. A fold in the sheet means a crease that the pressing room will have to deal with, and Mrs. Doyle keeps count of those complaints. The handle requires constant pressure, not a single great effort, but sustained, even turning, for as long as the sheet is between the rollers. A hospital sheet takes 40 seconds. You do not let go of the handle for 40 seconds. Then you reach for the next one. By 9 o'clock your right shoulder is aching. This is normal. Not the word you'd choose if you were choosing, but in the sense of expected, reliable, always present. The ache deepens into your lower back by 11. By 2 in the afternoon, your hands are numb from the cold of the wet fabric, despite the fact that the room itself is warm from the boilers. Despite the fact that your hands are in motion constantly, the cold comes from inside the wet cloth. It is patient. You notice lately that the numbness takes longer to wear off in the evenings than it did when you first started. You've said nothing about this to anyone. Mrs. Lennon, 9 years at this work, has hands that look as if they belong to someone twice her age. The knuckles permanently swollen, the skin thickened and deeply creased. On cold days she spends the first 20 minutes of the morning warming them over the boiler before they'll do what she needs. You are 17. You do not look at Mrs. Lennon's hands too often. Did you hear about Kathleen? Bridget says. She's at the mangle next to yours, her voice low. Mrs. Doyle is at the other end of the room, but sound moves oddly in the wet washroom, bouncing off the stone floor and the copper vats. Hear what? Bridget doesn't answer immediately. She feeds a sheet through her mangle. The water runs. She folds the flattened sheet into the basket. Tommy Burke's not going. To marry her. The words land quietly without drama, but you understand immediately what they mean, because you've been in this city long enough to know exactly what they mean. She's certain then? Mrs. Sullivan told my cousin she saw it herself. A pause in which both your mangles keep turning. 3 months. 3 months. The sheets move through your rollers. Water runs down the channel. Steam rises from the vats across the room. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, a cart goes past on Tithbarn Street, the horse's hooves sharp on wet cobbles. Kathleen Quinn of the tobacco factory, dark-haired, with a laugh that fills a room, who's been walking out with Thomas Burke since March. 9 months of walking out. Church together and Sunday afternoons and the careful public courtship that this city requires. And now, 3 months. You know what happens next. Everybody on Scotland Road knows what happens next. If Tommy Burke marries her quickly before it shows, then it's a story people tell for 6 months and then forget. A baby that arrived a little early, and so what, and move on. If he doesn't, Kathleen loses her position at the tobacco factory, which requires a character reference from your previous employer and will not supply one in this situation. She loses her room, she loses her reputation, which in this world is the only kind of currency that can't be borrowed from anyone else. And then, the workhouse on Brownlow Hill, or an aunt somewhere rural who takes her out of charity and extracts the labour back, or the streets, the baby would be taken. Your hands are still moving, sheet after sheet. The mangle does not pause for you to think. Will he marry her, you ask? Bridget's mouth tightens slightly. His mother doesn't want it. Says Kathleen's not good enough. The irony of this, that the mother objects to a condition her own son created, is something neither of you says aloud. You don't say it because it is so obvious and so grotesquely unfair that saying it feels like pointing at a wall and saying, look, there's a wall. The wall is still there. What will she do? I don't know, Bridget says. And the not knowing is its own kind of heavy. You feed another sheet through. This is what courtship means in 1885 for a girl like you. This is the risk that lives underneath every Sunday walk, every brief conversation at the church gate, every moment when a young man catches your eye and your chest does that particular thing chests do. The stakes are not, will he love me? The stakes are not, will I be happy? The stakes are, will I end up like Kathleen? At the half-hour break, 20 minutes, a fire in the break room, your tea from the can you brought from home. Bridget says what her mother said before she left Mayo. She said, wages are your safety net, but wages run out. Sickness, or being let go, or getting old and too slow for the work. Wages are temporary. A husband is permanent. She wraps both hands around her tea can. Tin, dented, with a cloth wound around the middle to keep the heat. A good husband, she adds, not just anyone with a pulse. You do this calculation without wanting to, the same way you calculate which street is faster in fog, whether the boots will last another season, whether the 9p for new soles is better spent on food. It lives below conscious thought, but it is always running. Your wages at Mercer's, 8 shillings and 6p per week for 50 hours. Above average for laundry work because you've been here 2 years and Mrs. Doyle counts you as reliable, and reliable workers are less common than the supply of available labour would suggest. Your expenditures, 2 shillings and 3p for your room. Mrs. Higgins weekly firm. 1 shilling for food, which is bread and potatoes, and sometimes a piece of bacon, and on Fridays the cheaper cuts of fish from the market stalls on Scotland Road. 3p to Mrs. Higgins for the morning fire and hot water without which getting through the mornings becomes significantly worse. Sixpence for coal for your own room on the worst nights, a penny here and there for blacking for needle and thread, for the halfpenny collections at church that you give not from devotion, but from the social arithmetic of being seen to give. What remains in a good week? 2 shillings, perhaps slightly more, which you save. Toward what exactly remains, to be honest, somewhat vague. Toward the future, which is real but not yet visible. In a bad week, illness, or sending something to your mother because her last letter used the word difficult in a way you understood immediately. In a bad week you end it with nothing, and the savings don't grow, and the future stays just as vague but more alarming. Now consider the arithmetic of a husband. A cart driver with regular employment, not casual, regular, earns perhaps 18 shillings a week. A tradesman earns more, a clerk more, again. Even a labouring man with steady non-casual work earns 12 to 15. 2 wages together, almost double your current income. 1 room between 2 rather than each paying for their own, halving the largest line item. Food for 2 people, not much more than food for 1, given the economies. And beyond pure arithmetic, security against catastrophe. If you're ill, he still earns. If you lose your position, which you will eventually, because when you're with child, the laundry will let you go and will not reinstate you with an infant, he still earns. If Mercer's closes, if Mrs. Doyle takes a violent dislike to you, if the institutional wash contracts move elsewhere, he still earns. This is what your mother was saying in her practical Mayo way. This is what Mrs. Higgins says every morning with her remark about boots. A husband is not a luxury, in this city, in this year, for a girl in your position. A husband is the difference between security and catastrophe, and catastrophe here has a very specific face. It is the workhouse on Brownlow Hill, where the beds are hard and the food is designed to sustain life without providing anything that might make life worth sustaining, and where women go when everything else has failed. You've never been inside the workhouse, but you've seen it. Everyone in this part of the city has seen it. The grey walls, the high windows with their small panes, the gate that opens for admittance and seems, from outside, to open less reliably for exit. And this, all of this, the arithmetic and the catastrophe avoidance, coexists with the other thing, which is harder to put into the same rational framework. The loneliness of Sunday afternoons, the heaviness of being a person whose life is lived entirely among other people, and who is not specifically anybody's, the ordinary human desire, ordinary as hunger, as basic as wanting to be warm, to be chosen. To have someone who wakes up thinking about whether you are, all right, you don't say any of this to Bridget, you don't need to. It is the water everyone in this break room is swimming in, and they all know it, and naming it out loud would be either sentimental or redundant. The trouble, Bridget says, finishing her tea, is there are far more of us than there are decent ones. The men who will marry you and work steadily and not drink the wages and not lift a hand when they're frustrated, those men exist. But the city is full of men who want what they can get from a girl and then want to get away from it. And in a city this size, with this many people moving through it, it is not always easy to tell which is which before you've already handed over the thing that cannot be retrieved. Mrs. Doyle opens the door. 5 minutes. You put down your tea can. You go back to the mangle. There are rules about courtship for working girls. You learn them the way you learn everything else in this city, by watching what happens to the people who break them. Rule the first. You do not bring your followers to your employer's property. This applies most sharply to girls in domestic service. If you work as a parlour maid or a housemaid for a family on Rodney Street or Abercrombie Square, or one of the good streets near Sefton Park. And this is where the real money is for women's work, because a good household position pays more than laundry, and includes food and lodging, which changes the arithmetic considerably. Then the condition of your employment, as stated explicitly in the terms and implied in everything else about the arrangement, is that no followers come to the house, no young men at the servants' entrance, no letters of an amorous nature delivered to the household, nothing that suggests your attention is anywhere other than your employer's interests. This rule is absolute. Girls lose their positions for letters, not for anything that happened, just for the letter. And without a character reference from your last employer, you cannot get another domestic post. You're finished in service. You start over at the bottom, the mill, the laundry, the factory, the worst paid work in the city. At Mercer's the rule is looser, but Mrs. Doyle has her version of it. Men do not loiter at the gate. Conversations at the gate do not delay workers. Nothing in your behaviour during working hours should suggest that your mind is somewhere other than the work that is currently paying for your existence. What happens beyond working hours is technically your own business. But Mrs. Doyle watches, not conspicuously. You feel it rather than see it. The slight pause in her movement as she passes the gate when someone is standing outside it. The way she knows, always, who arrived with whom and who left in which direction. Rule the second. You do not go anywhere alone with a man before you are engaged to him. This is the rule that costs the most to keep, because the whole architecture of respectable courtship requires that you never be alone with a man, or more precisely, that you never be seen to be alone with a man, which means that the discovery of whether you actually like each other as people must be conducted in public, surrounded by strangers, in venues chosen specifically for their visibility, which means most of the getting to know is done in short, interrupted fragments, in the cold, with people walking past, and the whole thing is like trying to read a book with someone repeatedly turning the page for you before you're ready. And yet this rule is real and consequential. A girl seen going somewhere private with a man she's not engaged to is assumed by a significant portion of this neighbourhood to be something other than she was before. Whether anything happened matters less than what is assumed, what is said, what Mrs. Higgins hears from the woman next door and mentions in passing to someone else, and what that passing mention eventually becomes. Reputation here travels faster than people, and only in one direction. Rule the third, not written anywhere, but encoded in every conversation, every raised eyebrow, every significant look between women of a certain age. Courtship must resolve within a reasonable time being roughly 1 year. Walking out with a man for 18 months who gives no sign of proposing is understood, in the social arithmetic of this part of the city, to mean one of two things. Either there is something wrong with the girl that makes him hesitate, or the man is not serious. Neither conclusion helps the girl. Kathleen and Tommy Burke walked out for 9 months. The 3 months that Bridget told you about this morning came on top of those 9. Which means the timeline has collapsed, which means Tommy Burke either proposes this week or something irreversible has begun. You think about all of this at your mangle through the afternoon. The sheets come and the sheets go. The water runs down the channel. You're right. Shoulder aches. Your hands are numb at the fingertips. Your mind keeps coming back to a calculation that has nothing to do with laundry. His name is James Maguire. He is 21 years old, from County Leitrim originally, here for 3 years, and he drives a cart for Hopkinson and Sons Coal and Coke on Scotland Road. He's not handsome in the way that makes girls foolish. He has a broad, honest face and a nose that was broken at 15 and didn't set quite straight, and his hands are large and scarred at the knuckles from cold weather and rough work, and there is a permanent shadow of coal dust in the creases of his fingers that washing doesn't fully remove. He is a substantial person, not tall, but solid, the way that physical labour makes a man solid by the time he's 20. But his eyes are good, brown, steady, with a quality of attention that is worth something. When you talk, he listens, not with the particular performance of a man who is listening because he thinks that's what he's supposed to do, but the real version, where you can see him fitting what you've said into what he already knew, adjusting. That is rarer than it should be. You met him 6 weeks ago at Mass, St Anthony's on Scotland Road, which is the church your part of the neighbourhood uses, packed to the back wall on Sundays, the incense heavy enough that you can feel it in your throat. He was standing in the aisle when the Mass ended, waiting for the crowd to thin, and you were 2 feet away for the same reason. You looked at each other. He looked away first. Not because he wasn't interested, you read that look correctly, but because he was cautious, and in this neighbourhood, cautious is not a bad quality to look for. The second Sunday he was there again. You were there again. He looked away less quickly. The third Sunday he was outside the church when you came out, in the particular posture of a person who has decided to be somewhere and is pretending the decision was spontaneous. He said, "Good morning." You said, "Good morning." He said, "Cold morning." You said, "It is." He said, "Did you walk far?" You said, "Eldon Street." He said, "I board on Christian Street, 4 streets from you." And his name was James Maguire, which you knew already because you'd asked Bridget, who'd asked her cousin, who'd asked someone else. In this neighbourhood, information about young men of marrying age travels at the speed of Sunday Mass. In the 3 weeks since that first exchange, you have spoken twice more, both times after church, on the pavement of Scotland Road. Both times he walked beside you for the length of the street, 6 minutes, talking carefully about the weather, the state of the roads in wet weather, the price of coal this winter, your families, his family, 3 sisters, a brother, a mother in Leitrim who writes monthly letters that always end with something that makes him pause before he tells you about them. His father is not mentioned, which tells you something without needing explanation. He hasn't suggested anything. No evening walk, no invitation to anything. Just the 6-minute walk home from church, in full view of 200 other people making the same journey. He is being careful, respectful, moving at the pace that this neighbourhood considers appropriate. Or he is uncertain. It is genuinely sometimes hard to tell the difference. On Sunday you will find out. Friday passes, Saturday passes, you work both days. On Saturday at 1 o'clock the laundry closes. Half day. You go home. Heat water for 1 full minute of negotiations. Mrs. Higgins is in a complicated mood about Sergeant's digestion, which apparently has been troubled since he ate something in the yard that Mrs. Higgins describes only as something he shouldn't, and carry the water upstairs in the enamelled jug. You wash properly, not the brief morning splash of cold water that is a gesture at cleanliness rather than the real thing. The real thing standing in the tin basin, the water genuinely warm for the first 4 minutes before the cold air wins, washing your hair over the basin with the hard bar of soap and then rinsing it 3 times. The clean smell of your own hair, wet, is one of the small, precise pleasures of the week, and you take the full 30 seconds of it before wrapping your head in the piece of toweling. When your hair is dry enough, you comb it through. The comb moving through clean hair without resistance, from root to end, the particular smooth resistance of it. This is the physical sensation that weekly washing exists for as far as you're concerned. Your Sunday dress comes out from under the mattress where you keep it flat to prevent creasing. Blue-grey wool, slightly lighter than the work dress with a white collar that detaches for washing. The collar is the secret. A clean white collar transforms the same dress every week. It says, "This person takes care of herself." In a world where that cannot be assumed, it matters enormously. The boots, Mrs. Higgins was right, though you will carry that knowledge in silence. You polish. Black polish from the tin, rubbed in with the cloth, then buffed with the brush until they achieve something approaching a shine. The left one, with its corn-aggravating shortness, is polished with the same thoroughness as the right. Fairness. You look at yourself in the small mirror. You look like a girl who's going to church and then for a walk and hoping to be seen by someone specific. You look like exactly what you are. St. Anthony's on a Sunday morning in December. The smell at the door, incense and candle wax and cold stone and the collective body heat of 400 people packed into a space designed for 300. The church was built in 1833 and has been absorbing the prayers of Irish Liverpool ever since. People who came before the famine and after it. People for whom this building, with its Latin and its rituals identical to the ones they left, behind in Connaught and Munster, was the one place in a foreign city that felt like home. 2 generations of that. It is in the walls. 4th pew from the back, beside Bridget, who has arrived early and saved a space with the territorial efficiency she applies to everything. Father Mulroney is 62, with a voice like gravel being poured, and he preaches for 15 minutes on charity toward the poor. The irony that most of his congregation is the poor is either lost on him or so obvious he's decided to address it head on. Father Mulroney is not easy to read. You think about Kathleen during the sermon, not with judgment, with the particular focused attention of someone cataloguing risk. The Mass ends. You file out into the grey December morning, the cold hitting your face after the compressed heat of the church. And there he is, James Maguire, at the edge of the churchyard wall, talking to another young man you don't know. He looks up when you come through the door, holds the look for a second, nods, you nod back, and keep moving because stopping in the doorway would be noted by 30 people at minimum. You get to the gate. Bridget's hand closes on your arm. He's watching. I know. He's going to come over. Bridget, don't. He's coming over. Good morning. Good morning. The other young man has evaporated. James is standing 2 feet from you, hat in both hands. He took it off, which is something, it means someone taught him correctly, and his hands turning the brim in the involuntary way of a person whose body is managing something his face is trying not to show. Cold morning again. It is. A pause. He looks at you directly. The direct look, the one he didn't risk the first Sunday, and takes the slight breath of someone who has decided. I was thinking, he says, the waterfront on Sunday afternoons, near the pier head. There's usually people walking. If you had no other plans, he stops, starts again more simply. I'd be glad of your company. The waterfront promenade near the pierhead. Open air, crowds of people. The most publicly visible location for a Sunday afternoon in Liverpool. A place that says explicitly to everyone who sees you, my intentions are entirely proper and I want witnesses. I have no other plans, you say. He turns his hat once more. A small smile arrives on his face, not fully formed but real. 3 o'clock, outside St. George's Hall. 3 o'clock, you say. You arrive at 5 minutes to 3, because arriving late suggests indifference, and arriving early suggests you've been thinking about nothing else for the past 4 hours, which you have. But that particular truth can be kept internal. St. George's Hall sits at the top of Lime Street like a statement, and it is a statement deliberately. Built between 1841 and 1854 at a cost of £300,000, a number so large that when you try to place it against your weekly wage it becomes almost fictional. It is the civic pride of a city that had a great deal to be proud of and wanted the rest of the world to know it. The front is a colonnade of 40-foot Corinthian columns, 15 of them running the full length of the portico, pale limestone that catches the low winter light and holds it. Above the columns, carved allegorical figures hold wreaths and gaze into the middle distance with the serene confidence of people who have never worried about rent. It contains a great hall for concerts and civic ceremonies, law courts for criminal and civil cases, and a magnificent organ in the concert room. Justice and culture housed together under one roof, which is a very Liverpool kind of confidence. You have walked past this building hundreds of times. You've never stood in front of it and actually looked at it. There is a difference. It's something, James says from beside you. He's arrived precisely at 3, his coat brushed, his boots clean, his hat on straight. I've never really looked at it properly, you say. I used to deliver coal here for the heating. They have a furnace in the basement the size of this road. You'd never guess, standing out here, that underneath all this there's a man shoveling coal in a hole in the ground. You look at the columns again. Something in them shifts slightly with that information. No, you say. You wouldn't guess. He offers his arm. Formally, correctly, with the slight hesitation of someone who is not certain whether it's too soon. You take it. The wool of his coat sleeve is rough under your fingers. You walk south toward the river, Lime Street to the waterfront, 20 minutes, and in these 20 minutes you conduct the most important conversation of your week, without it appearing to be a conversation of any particular importance at all. This is what courtship is. The accumulation of critical information inside the structure of ordinary talk. He tells you about his family, 3 sisters, Eileen and Mary and Catherine, brother Patrick, who is still in Leitrim but coming next spring, his mother who writes monthly letters and always ends them with a sentence that makes him quiet for a moment when he reads it. He does not elaborate on this sentence. His father is not mentioned. You file all of this. Sisters here, brother coming, roots forming, mother in Ireland with a weight to her letters, some complication, either illness or grief or financial difficulty or all 3, father unmentioned, dead or estranged, or both. He asks about your family. You tell him. Your mother in Mayo, managing the farm with your eldest brother since your father died 5 years ago. 2 sisters married and local. Another brother in America since last year. The farm too small to keep everyone. You send money home, he asks, when I can. He nods once as if he knew this and is confirming it. My sisters do too. Catherine says she sends a third every month. She doesn't have much herself. 3 years in Liverpool and he is Still sending money to Leitrim. This is information about character. Hopkinson treats you well, you ask. Well enough. Regular work, which is the main thing. He's a fair man for hours. Doesn't run you past dark without extra. And the horses are decently kept, which tells you something. The way a man treats horses, your father used to say, tells you a great deal about how he'll treat everything else. Do you like the work? He considers this. I like the horses. Edmund especially, the old grey. He's been with Hopkinson 12 years. Nobody else can handle him properly. He's bad-tempered with strangers, but he knows me. He is quiet for a moment. Then, I'd like my own cart eventually. My own round. It takes time and it takes money and I haven't got the money yet. But it's possible. Possible. Not probable. Not certain. Possible. An honest assessment of where he stands. You walk in silence for half a minute. The city around you is quieter than weekdays, the Sunday emptiness that settles over working streets when the work stops. A dog follows you for a block and then loses interest. A woman is hanging washing from a first-floor window with the air of someone conducting a personal protest against the December cold. There's a girl at my laundry, you say. Not planning it exactly, but the information has been sitting in your chest all week and it wants an exit. She's in trouble. The man she was walking out with. You don't finish the sentence. You don't need to. He's quiet for 1 second. 2. Will he marry her? His mother doesn't want it. Another silence. My sister, he says. Catherine. She came here 5 years ago. Before me. He doesn't look at you. Looks at the pavement ahead. She met someone. A man who was not what he said he was. A pause. It took her a long time, but she's all right now. Married in Birkenhead. 2 children. He stops walking for a moment, then continues. She told me, before I came, be straight with girls, she said. Boys here think the city is so big that what they do disappears into it. But she said it doesn't. Girls remember. You look at him sideways considering this. Girls remember, you say. Yes, he says. They do. The pierhead on a clear December afternoon, with the fog for once lifted. The river is wide. You forget, living inland from it, how wide it actually is. Not a river in the way the rivers back home are rivers, small and personal and hedge-bordered, but something almost oceanic, a quarter-mile across to the Birkenhead shore and more, brown-grey and moving with purpose, with the slow, muscular insistence of water that has a long way to go and knows it. The ships. Even on Sunday the river works. Great ocean steamers at anchor in the deep channel, their black funnels and white hulls reflecting in the water. Sailing ships. There are still sailing ships, though fewer each year now that steam has proved itself. Their masts making a complicated geometry against the pale sky. The Birkenhead ferry cutting across the current with its load of Sunday passengers, its wake spreading in 2 white lines behind it. The docks stretch north and south farther than you can comfortably see. Miles of quay wall, miles of warehouse. The Albert Dock to your left, red brick, arched, massive, opened 40 years ago, and still one of the largest enclosed dock systems in the world. Inside those warehouses, cotton and tobacco and rum, and every commodity that moves through the busiest trading port in the empire. The smell at the pierhead is different from 4 streets back. Stronger, rawer, the salt and mud cut with engine oil and the distant petroleum smell of the steamers. But there's something else in it too. Something harder to name. Something that might simply be the smell of distance, of places you've never been and probably never will. James buys 2 baked sweet potatoes from a woman with a brazier, a penny, from his coat pocket, produced without calculation, which is either confidence or carelessness, and you're not sure yet which. You take yours and eat it standing at the river wall, burning your fingers on the skin, the inside giving off steam that rises into the cold air. Other couples on the promenade, many of them. This is what people do here on Sunday afternoons when they are in the process of becoming something to each other. They come here, where it's free and open and public, and they walk and they talk and they eat things from braziers, and they work out whether this is going somewhere. And then you see Orla Quinn. You know her slightly. She works at the tobacco factory, attends a different church. You've spoken perhaps 3 times in your life. She's walking with a young man, their heads inclined toward each other. She's wearing a good dark blue coat, well buttoned. But from this angle, in this particular light, it is visible. Perhaps 4 months. The coat is doing most of the work of concealing it, but not all of it. The young man beside her is navigating the uneven surface of the promenade with the careful attentiveness of someone managing a situation. He guides her around the loose stones, adjusts her arm, watches where she places her feet. He has the look of a man who made a decision and is living with it, not the look of a man who is running. They walk away from you upriver toward the Albert Dock. James is quiet for a moment. Acquaintance yours? Not closely. He doesn't say anything else about it. He looks at the river. My sister told me something else, he says after a moment. She said, when you find a girl worth being honest with, be honest immediately, before you've built anything on dishonesty, because you can't build anything worth having on a foundation of dishonesty. He says this to the river, not to you, which makes it easier to hear. She sounds like a wise woman, you say. She learned the hard way. She'd say that herself. A steamer passes. Its horn sounds once low and slow, reverberating off the water. I don't want to be Thomas Burke, he says, or whoever that man is, walking with Orla Quinn there. He turns and looks at you directly. That's what I wanted you to know. That's the kind of straight-talking Catherine told me to do. You hold his look. I appreciate it, you say, simply because it is true and simple. He nods once. Then he looks back at the river, and you both stand there watching the steamer until it has gone around the bend. The light fails fast in December, going from gold to orange to grey-purple in the 20 minutes it takes to walk from the pierhead back towards St. George's Hall. Gas lamps coming on as you walk, their circles of light not quite reaching each other. The dark stretches between them requiring a slight adjustment of vision each time you pass through. He walks you to the corner of Eldon Street. Thank you, he says, hat in hands again. Thank you, you say. The pause that is not quite comfortable and not quite uncomfortable. Next Sunday, he asks. You let the question exist for 2 seconds. Yes, you say, next Sunday. He smiles properly this time, a full smile, and puts his hat on. Good night, Miss Bayern. Good night, Mr. Maguire. You walk down Eldon Street without looking back. You count to 20 before you allow yourself the thought you've been managing all afternoon. He might actually be what he appears to be. You don't trust that thought. You know better than to trust a thought like that after 4 hours and 2 conversations. You've been in this city long enough to know that appearances are not evidence. But you let yourself have the thought anyway, for 4 streets, until you reach Mrs. Higgins' door. Monday and Tuesday pass at the mangle. Wednesday brings a larger institutional wash than usual. The hospital has sent extra. which Mrs. Doyle greets with the expression of someone whose bank balance has improved while her back has gotten worse. On Wednesday evening, Bridget comes to find you on Eldon Street. This itself tells you something. Bridget doesn't come to Eldon Street in the evenings. She comes when she has something to say that cannot wait until tomorrow's mangle. Tommy Burke has gone, she says at the door, standing in the cold without coming in. You look at her. Gone where? Manchester. His cousin has work there. He left Sunday night. A pause. Kathleen's sister came to Mrs. Sullivan's this morning. The two of you stand in the doorway. Mrs. Higgins is in the kitchen. Sargent is presumably in the kitchen. Daniel Carey's footsteps move somewhere above. What will she do, you ask? Her mother says she'll go home to Wicklow. Her uncle has a farm. The baby will... Bridget stops, looks at the street. The baby will be adopted out. She says this in the flat tone of someone reciting a fact that has not yet fully landed. It will land later, maybe tonight, maybe in a week. These things land at their own schedule. You think of Kathleen at Mass, 3 weeks ago, wearing her second best coat, laughing at something Father Mulroney said in the porch. The laugh that fills a room. Going home to Wicklow is not the worst outcome. The worst outcomes are the ones that don't involve going anywhere at all. The baby, though, you say. Bridget doesn't answer. There is no useful answer. You stand in the cold together for a moment. Then Bridget says she should get back, and you say yes, and she goes, and you go inside. Mrs. Higgins is in the kitchen. Sargent looks at you with his usual inscrutable assessment. She looks cold, Mrs. Higgins says. I am cold. There's tea. You sit in the remaining chair. Sargent has moved once tonight, which is unprecedented and suggests either the weather or some shift in the cosmic alignment. And Mrs. Higgins pours tea and does not say anything about boots. A girl in trouble? She asks eventually. You look at her. Yes. She's quiet. She stirs her own tea, though she takes it without milk, and there is nothing to stir. She had a girl come to her once, she says. A cousin's daughter. She was in trouble. Her man had gone, and she came here, and she had nowhere. A pause. She stayed 3 months, in the back room, before the Flanagans. The baby didn't live, and then she went back to Galway. She says this without embellishment or emotion. It is simply a thing that happened, one of the many things that have happened in the course of 60 years of living in a city that provides abundant opportunity for things to happen. Was she all right, eventually? She was all right, eventually. Mrs. Higgins puts her cup down. She got married the year after. A farmer. Had 3 more children. A pause. She sends a card at Christmas. You drink your tea. The boots, Mrs. Higgins says after a while. Yes, I'll polish them. She knows. Thursday at the mangle, the ache in your right shoulder develops a new companion. A tightness in your left wrist where the cold has settled into the joint. It will pass. They always pass. But there is a particular late afternoon at the mangle in December when the light outside the small windows goes from grey to dark while your hands are still working and the mangle still needs turning and the pile of unprocessed sheets is still exactly as tall as it was 20 minutes ago. There is a specific hour in that experience that requires a decision about what to do with the fact that this is your life, and it will be your life tomorrow and the day after that. Most days you don't make the decision consciously. You simply continue, because continuing is what there is to do. The mangle turns, the sheets go through, the water runs down the channel. But sometimes the weight of it is physical. a heaviness in the chest and the arms and the wrists, not from the work, though from the work too, but from something harder to name, the distance from home, the narrowness of the options, the knowledge that the most important decision of your life is being made in 6-minute fragments on the pavement outside St. Anthony's. Mrs. Lennon catches your eye across the room. She's been watching the mangle workers with the proprietorial attention of long experience. Wrist, she says. It's not a question. Left, you confirm. She says nothing further. She goes back to her own station. But at the break, she produces from her apron pocket a small cloth soaked in something that smells strongly of camphor and turpentine, and she binds it around your wrist with a piece of rag tight enough to provide pressure, and says, 3 days, keep it on at night, and goes back to work. The wrist improves by Friday. You never ask her where she learned this, or what else she knows, or why she keeps a remedy for it in her apron. These things exist in her the way a great deal exists in a woman who has survived 40 years of physical work, quietly, practically, without annotation. Half day on Saturday, you take the walk to street, John's Market. The market on Scotland Road is one of those places that exists in a city the way certain organs exist in a body. You could not explain exactly why it works the way it works, but if you removed it, the whole organism would fail. It is covered. A great iron and glass structure built in the 1820s, and inside it, the city conducts a version of itself that the wide streets and the grand civic buildings don't quite capture. The smell of it hits you 20 feet before the entrance. Meat, fish, vegetables, cheap perfume from the haberdashery stalls, the hot fat smell of the fried fish stall at the far end, sawdust on the stone floor, and underneath everything the particular smell of a covered market in winter. The body heat of several hundred people, the condensation from their breath, and the faint vegetable undertone of produce that has been sitting in a heated space since 6 in the morning. You're here for potatoes and bread, and if the prices are right, a small piece of bacon. The price of bacon has gone up since October, and you're conducting your grocery budget with the vigilance of someone who's done the arithmetic and knows that the margin is thin. The market stalls are arranged in rows, each one a small performance of commerce, the vendors calling their prices, arranging their goods with the instinctive showmanship of people who understand that presentation is part of the sale, engaging each customer in the specific negotiation that is the market's native language. You buy potatoes from a woman who's been at this stall every Saturday for apparently decades, judging by the way she moves through the transaction. Efficiency, with the particular warmth of someone who has learned that warmth costs nothing and increases sales. You buy bread from the baker at the end of the row. A halfpenny loaf is yesterday's, a penny loaf is today's. You buy yesterday's, because the difference is not noticeable if you toast it properly, which is either thrift or pragmatism, and you don't distinguish between the two. The bacon, you find a piece, end of the cut, slightly cheaper than the prime slices, which will do perfectly well for what you want it for. At the haberdashery stall you stop for a moment, not to buy anything. You're looking at a length of ribbon, cream, satin, the kind of ribbon that would redo the collar of your Sunday dress into something slightly better. 3p for a yard. You have 3p in your pocket after the food. You pick the ribbon up, put it down, pick it up again. It is 3p that belongs properly to the savings, which are going to continue being vague and insufficient if you spend their constituent elements on ribbon. But it is also 3p, and it is ribbon, and Sunday is tomorrow. You buy the ribbon. You walk home in the fog, carrying your groceries, with 3p worth of satin ribbon in your coat pocket and the comfortable logic of a decision made. He is outside St. Anthony's. Again. This time he does not wait to be approached. He comes across the churchyard toward you with the direct intention of a man who has decided that the performance of coincidence is not worth anyone's time. Miss Byrne. Mr. Maguire. He offers his arm immediately this time and you take it, and the 15 people who observe this exchange understand what it means. This is now a recognisable thing. This is 2 people who are walking out, filed away in the social registry of Eldon Street and Scotland Road. Mrs. Higgins will know by Tuesday. You walk again, a different direction this time, north, up toward Everton. Everton sits on a ridge above the city, north of the centre, looking south and west over the rooftops and the docks and the river. It's a 20-minute walk uphill from Scotland Road, and the streets change character as you climb. The crowded working-class terraces of the lower city give way, gradually to slightly larger houses, slightly wider streets, the gardens of people who can afford to have something between themselves and the next household. Not wealthy. This is not the wealthy north of the city, not Rodney Street or the new houses round Sefton Park, but the comfortable working class, the skilled tradesmen and the small shopkeepers and the foremen. You pass a park. Not much of a park. It's a small rectangle of grass and benches with an iron railing, but green, which is notable. Green is not a common colour in this part of Liverpool in December. The ridge. You come up onto it and the city opens below you. You stop. Liverpool spreads south and west, impossibly large, impossibly dense, a grey and brown and black mass of rooftops broken by the spires of churches, dozens of them, Catholic and Church of England and Methodist and Presbyterian, and the chimneys of factories sending their smoke up to join the permanent overcast. The Mersey curves through the middle of it, catching the pale winter light in a way that makes it look, for a moment, like hammered silver. The docks follow the river south as far as you can see, a continuous industrial waterfront, the cranes and the warehouse roofs and the masts of ships visible even at this distance. Beyond the river, the flat Cheshire countryside on the far shore fading into haze. There, James says. He points south. That dome, that's St. George's Hall. You can see it, yes. The great dome rising above the surrounding rooftops, pale against the grey sky. And farther south, the slight glitter of what must be the Albert Docks glass roof. I didn't know you could see all this from here, you say. I deliver coal to a house on this ridge in the winters. Looked out over it one morning last January, 6 in the morning, frost on everything. The city looked. He stops. It looked like something that had nothing to do with me. Too big. Too... He shakes his head. Did it still look like that? After? He considers this seriously. Less. The more of it you know, the less. It looks like something separate from you. But it never completely goes away. That feeling of it being enormous. You look at the rooftops, the smoke from 1,000 chimneys rising and bending in the wind, making the whole city look like a thing that is breathing. 500,000 people, each of them in a house, in a room, with their particular arithmetic of wages and rent and the future they can't yet see. Each of them doing the calculation that you do every morning, each of them hoping that the calculation comes out right this time. It's not just enormous, you say. It's indifferent, isn't it? It doesn't care whether any of us... No, he says, it doesn't. A pause. But the people in it care, he says. Some of them. That's different from the city itself caring. You think about Mrs. Lennon binding your wrist with camphor cloth, Mrs. Higgins' tea and the ribbon you bought, Bridget standing in the cold at your door to tell you about Kathleen because she knew you needed to know. Yes, you say, that's different. The city breathes below you, indifferent and enormous. Beside you, James Maguire is warm and solid and present. Can I ask you something? He says. Yes. He's still looking at the city, not at you. What are you hoping for? He says. Not from... He stops. Generally, what do you want? It is a strange question. Not because it is inappropriate, but because nobody has asked you this directly before. Not in 2 years in this city. People ask what you earn and where you work and where you're from. They don't usually ask what you want. You think about it honestly. I want to not be afraid, you say. I want to not spend every week calculating whether the money will last. He nods. He's listening. I want somewhere that's mine, you say. Even if it's small, even if it's 2 rooms, I want it to be mine, not rented from Mrs. Higgins or sublet from someone else. Yes. And I want not to be alone in it. You say this carefully, because it is the true thing, and the true things require care. Not in the way I mean it in the boarding house. I mean, I know what you mean, he says. A silence in which both of you look at the city. I want the cart, he says. My own round, something I've built. I want to send money home not because my mother needs it, but because I want to, because I can. He pauses. I want to be reliable to someone. Reliable, not exciting, not grand. Reliable. You think about that word and what it means in this specific context, this city, this life, this decade, and you think it might be the most valuable word a man has said to you in 2 years of living here. Reliability, you say, is underrated. He laughs, short, surprised, real. The laugh of a man who didn't expect that. Yes, he says, it is. The following Tuesday, Agnes from first floor back knocks on your door. This has never happened before. Agnes, in your 2 years in this house, has not knocked on your door. Agnes exists behind her locked door as a principle of privacy. You open the door. She's standing in the hall with her coat on, which means she has just come in from work. The woman on Fielding Street, she says. She names a street 2 streets over. What woman? She's been asking about you, about whether you're walking out with someone. Agnes's face is neutral, informational. She asked my friend at the factory who you're walking out with and where he works and whether his employer will give him a character. You look at her. Agnes says, I don't know why I'm telling you this, only it seems like you should know. She goes back into her room. The door closes. You stand in the hallway. The woman on Fielding Street. You know who this is. James mentioned a neighbour, a woman his landlady is friends with. 2 streets over. She's asking about you. You go back into your room and sit on the edge of the mattress and think about this. Someone is checking you out, gathering information about whether you're a suitable candidate for something. This is not necessarily threatening. It is, in fact, the way this neighbourhood works. Before anything serious is decided, people ask questions. The women who know everyone ask everyone what they know, and the information is assembled and assessments are made. This is not threatening. This is the machinery of courtship operating exactly as it is supposed to operate. But it means that on the other side of this machinery, someone has decided the thing is serious enough to begin the assessment. James Maguire has apparently said something to his landlady, or to the woman on Fielding Street, or to someone who told someone who told someone. James Maguire has apparently indicated that this is serious. You sit on the mattress for a long time. Mrs. Callahan comes in from the salt warehouse and begins her evening routine. Boots off, kettle on the small spirit burner that she maintains in the room against Mrs. Higgins' rules, but to which Mrs. Higgins has decided to be strategically blind, and looks at you on the mattress. "All right," she says. "Yes," you say. "I think so." The third Sunday. He meets you outside the church again, the arm is offered again, you take it again. The neighbourhood social registry has filed this. Nobody is watching with special interest because everyone already knows. You're walking out with James Maguire, who drives the coal cart. You are Mary Ellen Byrne from Mercer's Laundry. This is an established fact. You walk to the waterfront again. The fog is back, a soft version of it, thin enough to see through. He says, "I've been thinking about the cart, about what it would take." "Tell me," you say. He talks. He has done the arithmetic carefully. The cost of a second-hand cart in good condition, the cost of a horse or the cost of leasing a horse, the cost of the coal merchant's license, the time it would take to build around from nothing. He is not reckless. He has a number in his head, £12, which is years saving at the rate he can manage, and he is 6 months in. 6 months to £12 means 6 months remaining. After £12, possibly a cart, possibly a business, possibly the stable foundation that the arithmetic of this city requires for everything else to be built on. 6 months, you say, about that. You're quiet for a moment. The woman on Fielding Street was asking about me, you say, directly, because he told you to be straight, and you're deciding to hold him to the same standard. He doesn't pretend not to know who you mean. His jaw tightens slightly. "Mrs. Donahue, my landlady's friend." "Yes." "I didn't ask her to do that." "I know you didn't," you say, "but she did, which means someone said something." He is quiet. He looks at the river. "I told my landlady you were a decent girl and I was considering. That's all I said." "Considering." "Yes. And now you're telling me 6 months. He turns and looks at you. The direct look, the one you've been calibrating for 3 Sundays now. "I'm telling you 6 months because I think you should know the timeline. I'm telling you what's real rather than nothing while I figure things out." He holds the look. "That's the straight talking. That's what Catherine told me." "And what are you considering?" you ask. The question hangs in the cold air between you. He takes a breath. "I'm considering," he says, "whether you'd want the same things I want." "I told you what I want," you say, "on the ridge." "You told me generally." "I was talking to you specifically," you say. "I knew who I was talking to." A pause. The Mersey moves past, indifferent and enormous. "Yes," he says. "All right." He looks at you for a moment longer. Then he looks back at the water. 6 months then, he says. 6 months, you say. Neither of you says anything more specific than that. You don't need to. In the language of this city, in this neighbourhood, among these people with the particular arithmetic of your lives as the context, 6 months is a sentence that contains everything else. Winter becomes the thing it always becomes in Liverpool. Grey, cold, personal. January brings fog so thick it turns the gas lamps at the end of Eldon Street into faint orange suggestions of themselves. You buy a thicker wool skirt from a stall on Scotland Road for 5p, and you wear it under the work dress, and the combination adds enough warmth to make the difference between merely cold and actually warm at the mangle. The corn on your left little toe reaches an accommodation with the boot, or rather your tolerance of it reaches an accommodation with the fact of it. Some mornings it barely registers. You still meet James after Mass, still walk on Sunday afternoons. The conversations get longer, more specific. He tells you about the horse, Edmund, who's been ill with a coughing sickness that the other Hopkinson drivers say is going around the stables. He tells you that Hopkinson's son has come into the business and is stricter about hours than his father. You tell him about Mrs. Lennon, who's not been well this month, a chest infection that she treats with the stoic minimalism of a woman who cannot afford to be ill. And about a new girl at the laundry, just 14 from County Clare, who reminds you of yourself 2 years ago, and who you have been trying to keep from the worst of Mrs. Doyle's attention. You're looking after her, James says. Someone should. Yes, someone should. February. The cold deepens. Ice on the puddles in the morning, the thin crackle of it under your boots. The water at the standpipe comes out so cold it hurts your teeth. The copper boilers at the laundry are the warmest places in this part of the city at 6 a.m, which is one thing to be said for them. Bridget announces that she has saved £11 toward the millinery shop. You celebrate with 2 cups of tea in the break room. Mrs. Doyle does not officially sanction this celebration, but absents herself at the convenient moment, which is her version of generosity. James's saving reaches £10 by the end of February. He tells you this on the second Sunday of the month, on the waterfront, in a tone of voice that is matter-of-fact, but contains something beneath it that is not quite matter-of-fact. 2 more months, he says. Approximately, you say. You both watch a steamer go past. I've been thinking, he says. Yes. When I have the cart, when I have the round established. It takes maybe 3 months after renting the cart to know if the round will hold. Yes. So 5 months from now, perhaps. Perhaps 6. I would know whether it's working. Yes, you say. You would. He's quiet for a moment. He turns his hat in his hands. It is February and it is cold, and you're both looking at the river, which does not look like silver today, but simply like itself. A large brown moving body of water, going somewhere with no particular concern for either of you. I'd like to ask you something in 5 months, he says. I know, you say. A pause. You know, he says. Not a question. Yes. And would the answer, I would, you say. In 5 months, I would. He's still for a moment, absolutely still, the way a large, steady person goes still when something has reached them. All right, he says. His voice is different, steadier, in a way that is itself a form of emotion. All right. The Mersey moves past, indifferent and enormous. March and then April, and the fog begins to lift properly, and the light stays later, and Eldon Street loses something of its winter quality, the hunched, head-down quality of a street that is enduring, and acquires something more tentative, almost optimistic. The green shoots come up in the window boxes. Mrs. Higgins plants something in a pot by the front door that she identifies as whatever she had, which turns out by May to be sweet peas. The mangle room at Mercer's is less cold now and more warm, and by June it will be genuinely hot. But for now it is simply at a temperature where your hands maintain feeling throughout the day without intervention. This is a significant improvement. The girl from Clare, her name is Siobhan, she's 14 and a half and has been here 6 weeks now, is starting to find her way. She no longer flinches at every sound. She has started to talk to Bridget about millinery, which is probably the beginning of an infection that will eventually cost her 5p. Kathleen Quinn went to Wicklow in February. Mrs. Sullivan heard from her sister that she's with her uncle on the farm, that the baby was taken, that she is recovering. which is a word that covers a vast deal without specifying any of it. Tommy Burke was seen in April on Scotland Road, which means he has come back from Manchester. He was seen with another girl, which means he has wasted no time. Nobody who matters speaks to him. Girls remember. That turns out to be accurate. On the second Sunday of May, James is waiting outside St. Anthony's with a different expression than usual. Not the careful, measured expression of a man managing a courtship with appropriate deliberateness. Something more open, something closer to pleased with himself, in a way he's trying not to make too obvious. "I've got the cart," he says. Before you can say good morning, before you can ask, before anything, "Tell me," you say. He tells you. A second-hand flat cart, bought from a carter in Walton who has given up the trade, in good repair, the wheels sound, the bed recently replaced. He has negotiated the lease of a horse from a stable on Vauxhall Road, a bay mare called, unfortunately, Princess, who is 7 years old and well-tempered, which matters if you're going to work with an animal every day. He has the coal merchant's licence, and he has 4 customers already from the Hopkinson round, customers who asked specifically to follow him when he left rather than transfer to the new driver. 4 customers is not a business, but it is the beginning of a business. Hopkinson, you say, he's all right with you taking them? He's not thrilled, but he was decent about it. He looks at you. He gave me a character. A good character from a previous employer. The economy of reputation that this city runs on, running in his direction now. The Princess, you say. Does she behave? She's well-tempered, but she has opinions. She expressed one about Edmund last week. He smiles. Edmund was unimpressed. You walk toward the waterfront, the way you always walk, and the city is doing the thing it sometimes does in May, when the light is clean and the fog is genuinely absent, and the Mersey goes actually blue rather than its usual brownish grey, and the whole place loses, for an afternoon, the quality of endurance that is its dominant note and acquires something almost generous. On the pierhead, with the river blue and the ships in the clear distance and the smell of the water salt and fresh, he says, "I told you 5 months. You did. It's been 5 months. It has." He turns to face you. He's holding his hat. He has learned, over 5 months, to hold his hat in his hands when anything important is happening, and he is holding it now. "Mary Ellen Byrne," he says, and then, after a moment, "Nellie." The first time he's used the name everyone actually calls you. "I'd like to ask you to marry me." The river moves past. A seagull goes over, extremely loud and entirely unconcerned. "Yes," you say, "I would like that." He smiles. The full version, unguarded. The one that has been arriving slowly over 5 months and has now arrived completely. "All right," he says. "All right," you say. The Mersey goes on being blue. The ships go about their business. 500,000 people in the city behind you continue their particular calculations, their particular arithmetic of survival and hope, and the distance between those two things. You are 2 of them, 2 of the 500,000, standing on the edge of the city with your hands linked and the river in front of you and the work ahead. In June, you will give your notice at Mercer's. Mrs. Doyle will note it in the ledger with a single nod that contains, if you interpret it correctly, something that might be the word "well." Mrs. Lennon will shake your hand. Her grip is strong, and her hands are what they are, and she will say flatly, "Get out of the laundry work and stay out." You will understand this as the kindest thing she knows how to say. Bridget will cry briefly, and then recover herself. and ask whether you'd recommend James's landlady's address as somewhere to find decent young men, and you will say, possibly. The wedding will be in August at St. Anthony's, with Father Mulroney conducting the service in his gravel voice. Mrs. Higgins will be there in her good coat with sergeants, blessing conveyed implicitly. Mrs. Callaghan will bring a ham from the salt warehouse that she claims fell off a cart, which everyone will accept without inquiry. The girl from Clare, Chauvin, will cry the way only 14-year-olds cry at weddings, with the total conviction of someone for whom this represents a possible future. You will move into 2 rooms on Christian Street, around the corner from James's former lodgings. The rooms are small and the wallpaper has a water stain in one corner, and the window in the back room doesn't shut completely. But the rooms are yours and James's. The landlady is a Mrs. Hanlon who is 60 and has no opinions about boots, which you will appreciate more than you expect. James's round will grow. Slowly, the way things that are real grow. Not dramatically, not overnight, but by one customer, and then another, by the reputation of arriving on time and delivering the weight that was paid for. By the end of the year there will be 12 customers. By the following spring, 20. Princess the Mare will be difficult in September, when something in the stable unsettles her. James will spend 3 evenings that week talking to her quietly over the stable door, which you will observe once without him knowing, and which will tell you something about him that you didn't already know. Your mother will write when she hears you're married. The letter will be longer than any letter she's sent before, and at the end of it she'll say something that you'll read 4 times. She'll say, "I always knew you'd be all right, Nellie. You were never one for going under, but tonight is still December. Tonight is still the first Sunday, still the beginning, still the part where you don't know yet how it will go. Tonight you are Mary Ellen Byrne, 17 years old, walking back down Eldon Street in the dark with the cold coming in off the Mersey and the gas lamp at the corner making its orange circle that doesn't quite reach you. You have had a good conversation with a man who turns his hat in his hands when he's nervous, and has a sister called Catherine who told him to be straight with girls, and this tells you something about the kind of person he is, which is the only information you actually have, which is not nothing. You go in through Mrs. Higgins' door. The kitchen is warm. Sergeant is in your chair. Mrs. Higgins is at the table with her tea, and she looks at your face the way she looks at everything, with the compact assessment of a woman who has had 60 years of practice. She sees she polished the boots, Mrs. Higgins says. I polished the boots. She also bought ribbon. I bought ribbon. Mrs. Higgins nods once, as if this is information she'd already calculated. Well, she says, sit down then. Sergeant gets off your chair without being asked. This is a historical first. You sit. The warmth of the range reaches you. Your feet, inside the polished boots, stop aching. Tell her about it, Mrs. Higgins says, and pours the tea. Your room. The cold is still there, waiting where it always waits. Mrs. Callaghan is not yet back from wherever Mrs. Callaghan goes on Sunday evenings, which she does not explain, and which you have stopped wondering about, because she is 53 years old and a widow, and if she wants somewhere to go on Sunday evenings, she has earned the right to go without explanation. You sit on the edge of the mattress and unlace your boots, both of them. Left first, slowly, because of the corn, working the leather away from it carefully. The relief of it is particular, the pressure releasing, the air reaching skin that has been compressed since 7 this morning. You lie back on the mattress with your boots in your hand, holding them, which is a strange thing to do but seems appropriate somehow. The ribbon on your collar is cream satin, worth 3p. The conversation on the waterfront is worth. You don't have a measure for it. It's in a different currency. Not wages, not shillings. Something else. Outside, the city is doing what it does on Sunday evenings. The pub noise from Scotland Road, faint at this distance, and the church bells from St. Anthony's marking some hour, and somewhere farther away the foghorn from the Mersey, low and slow, vibrating in the walls. 500,000 people, the merchants in their houses near the park counting the week's profit, the dockers in their terraces hoping for work tomorrow, the girls in their attic rooms and back rooms and boarding house beds doing the calculation you do, the one about the future and the arithmetic and whether it works out. Kathleen in Wicklow. Somewhere south of here, in a farmhouse you can't picture, making her own calculation about what comes next. Bridget with her £11 and her millinery dream. Siobhan from Clare, learning the mangle, learning the streets, learning how to walk through the city without flinching. Mrs. Lennon, whose hands will hurt in the cold until she can't work anymore, when the laundry will let her go and she'll have to find the next thing. And you, 17, Irish, here for 2 years, 2 rooms on your own wages, a corn on your left toe, a cream satin ribbon, and a man who holds his hat in his hands when he's nervous and has been told by his sister, who learned the hard way, to be straight with girls. This city has no sentiment about you. It does not care whether you find what you're looking for or whether you don't. It will be here long after you, filling up with the next generation of arrivals, running its calculations, offering the same deal it's always offered. Hard work, uncertain outcome, the possibility, not the guarantee, the possibility, something that holds. But Mrs. Lennon bound your wrist with camphor cloth without being asked, and Bridget stood at your door in the cold because you needed to know about Kathleen. And Mrs. Higgins poured the tea. The city is indifferent, but the people in it are not, or some of them are not, or some of them are not some of the time, which is more than the city owes you. You close your eyes, the ribbon on your collar, the boots in your hand, the foghorn on the Mersey marking time. The cold in this room is the same cold as every other room in this terrace, in this street, in this city tonight. Reaching in through the cracked putty, settling into the blanket, patient. But you've been sleeping in this cold for 2 years. Your body knows it now. It's just the temperature the night arrives at. Mrs. Callahan will come in later, quieter than she looks, and she'll sit on the edge of her mattress and work her boots off in the dark, and in 20 minutes she'll be asleep, and her snoring will be the low, reliable sound it always is. There is something, you've decided, comforting about the snoring of a woman who is all right, who has made it through another week. The sounds of Liverpool in the evening settle around you like familiar weight. The pub noise from the road moving through its cycles of laughter and argument and laughter again. The church bell. The foghorn on the river, slow and low. Somewhere, a baby crying and then not crying, which means someone got up, which means someone is there. Someone is there. That is the whole thing. You think, in 5 months, in 6, in however many months the arithmetic requires. But that's then. Right now is this. The cold and the ribbon and the foghorn. The city that doesn't care and the people in it who sometimes do. You're warm enough. You're fed enough. You're safe enough. In this room, in this city tonight. You've survived 2 years of a city that eats people alive, and you have your wages and your room and your boots and something. Something you can't name yet because it's too new and you don't trust unnamed things. But something. Let it come. Let sleep take you the way it takes everyone in this city eventually, after the day is done and the calculation is set aside, and there is nothing left to do but be a person who needs rest and gets it. Let the foghorn fade. Let the pub noise quiet. Let your thoughts slow to the pace of breathing, and then slower, and then stop. The streets of Liverpool will still be there tomorrow. The mangle will still be there tomorrow. The arithmetic will still be there tomorrow. But that's tomorrow. Right now there is only this. The city breathing. Your heart keeping its time. The particular darkness of an attic room in December. And somewhere 4 streets away, a man named James Maguire, who's been told by someone who loves him to be straight with girls. Centuries will pass. Liverpool will change in ways that would make you unable to recognise it. The sailing ships will go. The fog will clear. Or rather, the coal smoke that makes the fog will stop, because the city will stop burning coal that way, and the Mersey will run blue more often than grey. The back-to-back terraces on Eldon Street will be demolished, and new buildings will go up, and those buildings will change too. The docks will change. The Albert Dock will close and then reopen as something entirely different. Galleries and restaurants and history exhibitions where the cargo warehouses were, and people will walk through it on Sunday afternoons and take photographs. The laundry will become something else. The mangle will become a museum exhibit. But people will still come to this city from far away and be afraid of it at first and learn it slowly, street by street, until it becomes the thing their bodies call home. They will still stand on the pierhead and look at the river and do the calculation about the future. They will still sit in kitchens with tea going cold and talk about what they want and what's possible, and the distance between those two things. The human heart doesn't change. The need for rest at the end of a long day, after the calculation has been done as well as it can be done and put aside until morning, that doesn't change either. So let sleep come. Let it come the way it came to Mary Ellen Bairn on Eldon Street in the attic room, with the foghorn on the Mersey, and the cold through the putty and the cream satin ribbon on her collar, and the possibility of a future she couldn't yet see clearly, but was learning to see. Let the fog settle. Let the river move. Let your thoughts go to wherever thoughts go when they finally stop trying. You've earned this. Take it. Good night.